What's up, everyone? It's Matt Mrozik, aka MVM397, with a update slash work in progress on the GM Sniper 3 1/72nd scale from G System Shop. This is commission, and I haven't done an update in a long time. I've been posting pictures on Facebook, but I had a couple of requests to do a video since I'm in the weathering stages of this kit. And disclaimer here: this is not a tutorial. Because this is really my first attempt at really weathering a kit. So I'm going to go over the steps I've been taking, and I'll show you the GM here in just a second, but I'm going pretty heavy with the weathering on this guy. It's pretty rusted, beat up. He's a grunt suit, so I kind of approached it like you had seen some serious action, and it's been around for a while. So weathering's pretty heavy on this guy, but then again, it's really my first time attempting these techniques. So weathering is one of those things where I guess it's easy to go overboard, but I guess as long as it's consistent and it's cohesive, it's okay. So let me show you what the GM looks like real quick. Let me take this off the tripod. So here he is, and you can tell he's pretty beat up. Lots of rust, lots of scratches, and that red center part will get weathered when I do the next step, which is the runs and grit and stuff. So I approached this like basically everything on the lower side of all the panels would have more rust, because as things get chipped and they get wet, they get rusted more. So you'll notice that on the bottom side, like of the backpack, it's more rusted towards the bottom than it is towards the top. Same thing with the skirts, more weathering towards the bottom than towards the top, and same thing with the shoulders, more rust and scratches. I should say more rust towards the bottom, a few more scratches at the top, and then the feet, pretty beat up, you can see there. But I'm really happy with the overall effect. Like the knee is a really good example of what I'm going for. That's exactly the look I'm shooting for. The rust looks really natural. The scratches look natural. So I've been trying to carry that through the whole suit, and I think I've been doing pretty good, especially for my first attempt at doing this. So my client seems pleased so far. He saw some pictures and seemed happy with it, so that's what's important. But so let me show you the steps and the colors I've used to get this look. So again, this is not a tutorial. This is simply me implementing some techniques that I've seen people do. Not a particular builder, but just general weathering. In my opinion, one of the best builders and one of the best people that does weathering is Z Luca of Calamity, and Mr. Gab, if you've ever seen any of his builds, who weathers very similar to Luca. So let me show you my arsenal of what I've got going on here. For the initial chips and scratches, I'm using Vallejo Model Color acrylic, and this is oily steel. That's like a lighter shade. For a darker shade, a slightly darker scratch, I'm using gunmetal from Vallejo acrylic. Hopefully that's coming in focus. So model color Vallejo gunmetal gray. For my dark rust, I'm using Garage Kits US acrylic dark brown, right there. And then for the lighter shader rust, it's this cheap Tester's enamel rust color. So with all those in combination, I get the look that I was getting on the GM Sniper. So I got my palette here. I've got a little cup of, this is just lacquer thinner just to clean brushes if I need to, but to be honest, with this process, the dirtier the brushes, the better, I've noticed. So, and I also have a little bit of the MIG acrylic thinner. I've been thinning the acrylics down just a tad, because these are really thick out of the bottle. So I just cleaned my palette. It was pretty nasty from the past few days of working on this. So just going to put a little bit in there. This is the light color first, the Vallejo oily steel I'm starting with. And I'm going to just put a few drops of the thinner in there. Again, I don't want it soupy, I just want it a little thinner. And to apply the scratches, I just have a really kind of cheap brush. I was using my my really nice Winsor Newton brushes, and I found out that actually the cheaper brush did a better job at getting the effect I want. So this is just a really cheap brush, and this is a, I don't even know what size this is. It didn't really tell me. So we're going to do the shield. So it's going to be a fairly long video because I'm going to do the whole process. Hopefully my battery won't die. So I'm going to mix up my paint here. That nice and consistent. And as this dries out, I'll add more thinner if needed. And let's see, are we going to be in frame? Let's see if I'm right here. I think I'm in frame. So like I said, I start from the bottom on all these panels and I work my way up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to start kind of putting some chips with this oily steel. And the nice thing about using the acrylics, if I do something I don't like, I can just wipe it right off and I can go back. Because the underlying clear coat that this is going on top of is lacquer, so there's no interaction between the two types of paint. So you can get away with putting this on there and just kind of just doing whatever you really want. And I'm trying to make it as random as possible, concentrating on the edges and the corners, basically wherever the shield will get more contact. And this being the bottom of the shield, and this is a desert suit, I would assume that this would get put in the sand quite a bit. So I may just color this whole bottom, these tips, this oily steel, because the paint would get rubbed off as it went into the sand. And this doesn't make sense yet with what I'm doing here, but once I add the rust and stuff, you get that kind of worn panel look. So again, I wasn't happy with that little brush mark, so I'm going to go back and take it off and do it again. Again, there's no really rhyme or reason to this. This is really just kind of trying to do what would make sense in real life. What would happen if this guy was out in the field and seeing lots of action. So these tips, I'm going to basically just color this whole steel color. Hopefully I'm still in frame. So this is going to be a long video. I'll try to keep talking as I go so it's not so boring. I may take a break after I show you this part. So I'm not, because this will probably take me a good 30 minutes to just do the chipping on the shield. So again, we're just going to concentrate on the corners here, like right here. That would get hit. Right here again. Again, I'm not happy with that. So the thing I find hard is to get the chips to not look like brush strokes. Something I've been kind of fighting with. I kind of find that if I tense up my hand and make it kind of shake, like it's kind of having a spasm, it kind of tends to just bounce along more randomly, like that. Like I said, this whole bottom, I'm going to basically paint this whole area in steel. And on this part, I'm not worried about brush strokes, because by the time you're done with all this, you don't see them. Again, we're just going to concentrate on the edges here. And the more you do, the more realistic it looks. At least, I guess the more the piece you do, not the more weathering. When I first started, I was like, man, this doesn't look realistic at all. And the more I went through the process and the steps, it started to resemble something like being beat up. And you'll find that a lot of this will get covered up with the initial rusting steps. but we'll take care of that after doing the rust, because I'll go back and I'll add some fresh scratches on top of the rust, because this is my thinking. Something gets scratched, it's got a fresh, you can see bare metal underneath, it's nice and fresh. Well, as it sits outside in the weather and it gets rained on, it starts to rust. So that's where the rust comes in play. But even though it's rusty, it still gets fresh scratches every once in a while. You know, it's being used. So that rust gets scraped away. And so that's why I go back and I add some new scratches on top of the rust. So it's a combination of old scratches that have rusted and new scratches on top of the rust. It's kind of my theory. And I think it's kind of working so far. I'll say one thing, these decals, it's a good thing this is getting flat coat, because they did not blend in very well. Like this one, you can see there's a color difference between the decal itself and the paint lying around it. So I don't know what that is. This is an older kit, so maybe the decals were a little aged, been in the box for a while. I'm not sure. It's almost like the film just wasn't, may have had a little yellowing to it. So then I come up in these little panels right here, I really concentrate on the corners. Again, there's really no rhyme or reason to the direction of these. But like this part right here would be pretty worn. I mean, it's right on the edge of the shield, so this would get a lot of damage. So I'm gonna put quite a bit of this oily steel right there. And again, it doesn't look like much right now, but once you get the rust on there, it'll look like it's worn off. Looks like it's worn through. So I'm just going to paint that on. And I'm going to try to make it solid. I mean, I'm going to let some of the paint, the color of the shield shine through a little bit. And I try to, if I get done with one area, I try to go back to the other side and repeat, not necessarily the exact same thing, but just to keep it consistent as far as maybe the amount of weathering that I'm doing. I just realized that, well, I didn't realize, but after I got done doing the shield and everything, I should have left these pieces off and painted those separately. It's not a big deal, but it just would have made things a little bit easier as far as doing this process and panel lining. Again, I wasn't really happy with that, so I'm going to wipe it away. And so I'll probably just do the front side chipping, and then I'll pause the video and I'll finish the chipping, and I'll come back and show you some of the rest technique. So I'm going to go around there. Anywhere panels meet and they may rub together, I tend to do a lot of the chipping effect. And this is just one way of chipping. I mean, the salt technique works really well. I haven't tried that technique, but that's what Luca uses. Luca uses a lot. And since I typically paint with lacquers, I'm not sure what the process would be to do that, because that works with acrylics. Basically, you're taking the weakness of the acrylics to its advantage. You're basically, you spray everything with a rust color first, and then you spray it with a hairspray, which is lacquer based. You could also, I don't see why you just couldn't do a lacquer gloss coat. And then you put your salt, well, let me step back. You spray your base coat, spray your hairspray, sprinkle salt on top of that, and then you spray your top coat, and then you take a wet toothbrush and brush that salt away, and what you're left is with some of the rust color showing underneath from where the salt has been brushed away. This is kind of like doing that technique, but in reverse and using a paintbrush. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to try that technique eventually. I have to do some experimenting with since I use lacquers, and try to find the steps to do that. So you see, the more I do this, the less it looks like I've been painting stuff on. The nice thing about this is that this shield has quite a few little mess ups in the top coat. I've got fingerprints here and there, and I didn't go back and fix them because I knew I was going to be weathering it, and I'm just covering it up with some chips and stuff, so you'll never know they're there. So we're going to go into here. And this color doesn't show up as well on the yellow, but the yellow looks really good. After it's been rusted, it looks really, really kick-ass. This kind of sandy color takes the rust effect really well. And we're going to go in here. The part that I find hardest is painting scratches, like on a flat surface. I think I found a way that works pretty well, and I'll show you that in a second, because doing the paintbrush, to me, I don't know, when I do it, looks like it's just a paint stroke, like a paintbrush, like a stroke. It doesn't look like a scratch to me. I'm going to hit these pretty heavily up here, since these are raised. It'll get quite a bit of damage. So again, I'm just going to beat these up pretty good on the top part. I'm hoping this is all in frame. One thing I don't like about the camera I have is I have to, in order to see if I'm in frame, I have to look at the back of the camera while I'm working, and that's very difficult to do. So I think I'm in frame here if I just stay over my palette. Okay, so we're getting there. Starting to look like something. My battery's almost dead too, so I'm going to go plug it in while I finish the chipping. And we're going to do the top of the shield pretty heavily also. So I can imagine this being used as a weapon, maybe being thrust into something. One thing I found that's nice about using these acrylics is that even if they dry, after they dry out, you can add a little thinner to your pot, and it reactivates pretty good. I did eventually have to, before I started this video, I had to clean it out because it was getting to the point where it was all gummy, and there's a big mess of dried up paint in there. But so also I have done the panel lines. After I gloss coated the kit, I panel lined, decaled, cut the decals where they need to be cut, and then kind of did some more panel lining. So they're getting filled in a little bit here and there with the chipping, but I haven't done any of the next step on any of the kit, which is going to be like a wash and some of that kind of effect. Those will get filled back in with some grime and stuff. So I'm not worried about filling them in with anything, because they'll get redefined. Again, just like the bottom, basically painting this whole top part this oily steel. And the darker color for the chipping, I've been saving that for after the rust. It's like a dirtier color, so it makes more sense to me. Not so fresh. Let's go in the center of the shield here, where these panels meet, and do some damage. Again, really in the corners. little too much. We're going to wipe some of that away. Let's try it again. There we go. I also have a hard time not wanting to paint all the edges silver. Trying to leave some of the paint visible is a challenge for me. I don't know. So we're just about done with the outside part of the shield. We'll move on to the center part. And then trying to get some scratches here and there. Oops, I did way too much. Again, this part's raised up pretty high, so we're gonna rust that up pretty good. Should probably do the same thing over here. Looks messy now, but it does come together when you do the rusting. So one tool I found that works pretty good for adding scratches is just a skewer, dipping it in the paint and just kind of doing this kind of motion. And get a finer scratch. And even just taking my finger and kind of doing that motion. Can dab some paint on. And just use my finger like this. And these get you really fine scratches. Like so. You gotta be careful though, because then it starts to kind of blend and you don't get anything defined. It's just kind of. So I think that's it for the top side. I'm gonna go plug this in and do the back side. So that's kind of the first step. It looks pretty messy right now, but it's gonna all come together when I start going in there and laying down the rust, and we're gonna beat this shield up pretty good. Should get a lot of damage. Do these guys a little bit. Mostly on the top side, because that's where we get hit. Again, just kind of adding and wiping away to get the look you want. Okay, we'll come back and show you the rest of it when I'm done. Okay, so I finished the chipping. It took me altogether about 45 minutes to do all this. Don't know if you can see it in camera very well, but kind of see quite a bit towards the top there. It gets a little more subtle towards the middle. And again at the bottom it's pretty severe because I'm going to put a lot of rust there. And same with the top side here. This has got a lot of the steel on there because it's going to get rusted pretty good because that's the raised portion of the shield that'll get a lot of damage. Again, towards the top, quite a bit. At the bottom, I pretty much colored that solid steel color. So next step is to add the dark rust color. And like I said, I used the Garage Kits acrylic dark brown. And I've got some sponges here, and they're all different sizes. I've been kind of using, this has been kind of my go-to sponge. It's got all the colors on there, and it's just different random sides and stuff. So use this straight out of the bottle. It's pretty thin. Put a few drops in there. And this part's really fun. This is my favorite part. The chipping's not so much fun for me because it's a little nerve-wracking. So I take the sponge, any side really, and dip it in the paint. And as you can see, my paper towel here is pretty messy. And dab most of that off. And then starting from the bottom, I'm just going to dab it on. Now this bottom part is going to be pretty much covered up. And you just want to do this as randomly as possible. Turn the sponge. This. Again, a lot of the silver is going to get covered up, but I'm going to go back and add some fresh scratches on top of that. And just sponge it on. Basically, wherever I've added chips is where I'm going to add rust, because that's exposed metal and it would rust. Like the rest of the kit is going to be pretty heavy towards the bottom. But right there you can kind of see how it's, let's see, kind of starting to look like surface rust. That's what we're going for some surface rust look. I'm going to hit this part really pretty heavily right here. Just turn the sponge. Again, if it gets a little heavy in an area, just kind of try to wipe it away with my finger a little bit. And I've also used a paintbrush right here with some short bristles, and that kind of lets me localize the rust. I just stipple it in. I get a little more control with this. This way I can really kind of zero in a specific area. So sometimes I use that in small areas when I don't want to get other things around it too rusty. And this Garage Kits color, I only use a little bit at a time because it dries out pretty quick. It's pretty thin out of the bottle, so I just put a few drops out at a time. So between the sponge and the paintbrush, we can get different effects. Again, right here in the middle is a raised part, so we're going to hit that pretty heavily. I don't want to cover my decal all the way. I'm going to leave it a little bit, so we're going to wipe some of that away. So this is the part of the weathering where I kind of think I went a little overboard when I started. I just kind of kept going with it. In the end, I like the way it looks. One thing I found is that the sponge I bought, I wish it was like a tighter sponge, like the pattern was tighter, and that it wasn't so spongy. It's a little soft. I think I need to use a natural sponge, which which I could not find the other day. I went to go look for one, and I could not find it. So again, we're going to hit the top and the bottom pretty heavily, because in my mind I'm thinking that these two areas will get a lot of damage for defense and also for offense. You know, this would get stuck in the ground. This might get jabbed into something. So a lot of paint will get scraped away, hence a lot of rust. So I'm not going to do this whole process for this color on the video. I'll do the same thing. I'll take a break and then I'll come back when I show you so I went too heavy there. So then I'll come back with a dry part of the sponge and take it off. It's pretty cool though. After you get all the layers done, it's a pretty neat effect. I mean, like I said, it's my first time weathering and I really don't know what the hell I'm doing. But I'm getting the effects I want. It's just controlling them a little bit better that I wish I had, that I was better at. So again, it's like anything else, it takes practice. Luckily my client said that he thinks it's looking good, so that's what's important. And the nice thing is that all these kits I'm building for him, I'm holding on to them until Wonderfest, because it's not that far away for him, and since I'm going, he's going to drive down and pick these up, which means I can enter them into the contest, which is really kind of cool. So the Kshatriya, this, hopefully by that time I'll have all his kits done. We'll see. I've got a lot of building to do for him. Alright, so I'm going to continue this and I'll come back with the next color. Okay, so I went through with the dark brown and I did my rusting, and I went back and added some, took it off as I thought fit. So now we're looking pretty grimy. I put too much on top of the decal, so I took some of that off. I just simply wetted it a little bit, and with the acrylic it comes right off, so it's pretty nice. So the next step is to do the light color rust, which is this Tester's enamel. This is the cheap little bottles, like $1. It's actually these are actually really nice paints. Actually, they're really good for hand brushing and stuff too. So now what we're going to do is we're going to basically do the same thing. We'll take the light color and we're going to go over and highlight some of the brown, dark brown. Again, working from the bottom up. So we're on layer number 3 now. And another nice effect I found is if I get it too much, I just kind of wipe it down. It gives me some streaking effects, which I'm going to do again later with some oils and stuff, but kind of gives it a nice, another additional texture worn look. Now, using the enamels, these get pretty sticky. My hands are pretty messy, but as long as they don't show fingerprints, we're good to go. And this stuff, I'm really just concentrating on the high spots. The brown is our main color, and this is like our highlight. And I guess technically you could do a couple more tones of rust. I mean, rust is all different colors. So again, we're just kind of going in here haphazardly. Adding this. So right now my sponge is pretty dry, so I'm tapping pretty hard to get the paint to come off. Doesn't take a lot, it just takes a little bit. Again, I only put a little bit of paint at a time. Don't want it to get too dried out. Oops, too much. So when you do this when you wipe it, you kind of get this dry brush look too. It hits the tops of the panels, which looks pretty good. Another thing I keep, as I'm doing this, like I said, this is my first time doing these techniques. I also find that I can go back and stipple some of the metal color on. And it's just another layer. It gives it more depth. Seems like the more layers you put on, the deeper the effect gets. So this color right here is what really starts to make it look like rust. Especially on the lighter tones. This really adds the realism, in my opinion, of what rust looks like. I'm doing this pretty quickly. Now the enamel, if you put too much on, you have to take it off right away, because otherwise you have to use a thinner to take it off, and I don't want to hit this with any type of thinner. Now we just keep kind of going over it. I think the front looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. With the rust portion at least. Let's look at the back. Maybe a little more in the back. Just to keep it cohesive. At the top here a little bit. I said, this guy's been out in the weather for a long time, got a lot of use. So he's been beat up pretty good. Even out in the desert, even though there's no rain, you still get surface rust because of the humidity in the air. So okay, I think that looks pretty good. Looks like it's grimy in all the right places. So now, this is where I go back in with the darker color. Right here, the Vallejo gunmetal. That's oily steel, it's the wrong one. I do a little bit of dry brushing and new chips. Oops. A lot of paint for what I'm doing. Okay, a little paint, a couple drops of thinner, same brush, and I'm going to go back in and I'm going to hit some of these high spots again. This is a darker color, so this won't stick out as much, but if this guy's seen action, there'll be some fresh scratches on top of the rust. So it only makes sure, basically it's rust that's been scraped off. And if you've ever seen an old car that's been sitting out and has surface rust, it's very pitted. And now that we've added these layers with the sponge, there's actually a texture on top of the surface, which is very similar to pitted metal. So this really, to me, adds realism to the effect. You can see that, but through all that dirt and stuff, you can see some of that metal that we painted on earlier, right in here. And now we're adding these fresh scratches, and I'm just adding a few. I'm not going to go back and add a ton. Basically, just on the very high spots. Really in the corners. And I can dab my finger on it. Careful not to leave a fingerprint. To blend it a little bit. Again, just very selectively. Basically the same areas that have gotten hit first in battle. So we're going to go back. And then I have another brush here that I cut the bristles pretty much all the way off. And this is a very stiff brush. And it's great for going in there and just kind of streaking those a little bit to give it another sense of like a scratch. And it also just softens them a little bit. Oh, this weathering process is pretty relaxing actually. It's like, I mean, I'm doing this with the idea that like I can't screw up. I mean, I guess I could. I'm gonna go back here. I missed these. These don't have a lot of the rust, so I'm gonna go back and add some more. I'm just going to use my brush here. Go back and add some scratches on top of those. Some fresh scratches. And this is my process I've been doing on this whole kit. And for the most part, I'm really happy. I'm pretty happy. I'm actually really happy with the way it's looking. It's really beat up. This is kind of how it went. But yeah, I mean the techniques I'm using, like I said, this is the first time I'm doing any of these. They have turned out the way I expected. I'm getting the look that I would expect. I think if I had a sponge that was a tighter sponge, like a tighter pattern, I think I would be a little bit happier. But I can't complain. So again, we're just adding some very light. And this, when you add this darker steel color, man, it just brings out the idea of surface rust like you wouldn't believe. It's probably not showing up in the video camera as much, but those layers of stippling with the sponge and the paintbrush to get the rust color, it really does add that kind of pitted look. It actually feels pitted in my hand. And you can tell I'm not using gloves or anything. I'm not just holding this and my hands are getting all full of paint and stuff, but that's okay. Oop, that's a little too much there. There we go. Just kind of wipe it away a little bit. But this is what I've been doing. So, like I said, this really isn't a tutorial. This is just to show the process that I've been doing on this kit. Maybe you guys can give me some suggestions, or maybe you've learned something. Also, this is just to kind of show my client the process that I've been taking to do this. This is day 2 of weathering. So 2 solid days of doing this. And after the shield, I have left are the arms, and then the weapons. So I'm going to work on that tonight during the those Gundam guys broadcast. So if you watch that, well, this won't be uploaded by then, but anyway, this is Tuesday night, So I'm going to do that during the broadcast, and maybe if you guys are watching, you'll ask me questions or ask Clem questions, because they've done this a lot more than I have. But that's it for this work in progress, guys. After I'm done with this little process, it gets a dose of flat coat, and then the next step in the weathering. Sorry, it's probably out of frame there. The next step in the weathering will be I'll go in with some either oils or enamels, and I'll do some rain streaking. I've got some washes from MIG that I can try, so I'll do some grime and streaking and stuff like that. And then the last step will be some very light pigment treatments on the feet and just some other areas. But as usual, thanks for watching. This is Matt Mrozik, aka MVM3897, signing off, and we'll catch you guys next time.